slide. All right, well, it's good to stretch our legs. All right. So the second part, again, now that we've sort of laid the groundwork for emotions and what they are, and I had some conversations in the break, because again, I wanted to stress the fact that it is a reality, right? We have a life experience. We have experiences. They're occurring within consciousness, but we do have experiences, right? That's why we can experience a physical body. We do experience thoughts and emotions. So it's really part of having a human incarnation. So, again, we need to find a way to address this physically. We take care of ourselves, right? We try to eat healthy food. We do exercise. Same with emotional body. So that our experiences of that phenomenon is, again, more peaceful and less stressful. Again, so just we do have emotions, and so again, what do we do with them? And that's what the second half is really talking about, these tools for awakening, because again, the tools that we teach, and Ayurveda has many tools, as do even Western psychology has many tools. We try to incorporate at the center, like it's an integration, again, really to just appeal to we want people to bring these teachings into their lives and to make it accessible, and so we do bring in again many different tools. And once we start working with the energy body, emotions, there's many energy tools out there as well that we can use to help move emotions. And again, in fact, we were talking about trauma and other experiences that we have in the emotional body that we can use the body to move that emotional energy. So there's things like tapping, you've probably heard of, or I'm not going to talk about all of the modalities that are out there, of which there are many, but I'll focus on the ones that we use a lot and that perhaps you're familiar with. So again, these are pictures just to demonstrate all of the different tools we have. We have meditation, yoga, pranayama, which again, all of these are to experience our true nature, move that divine intelligence within the mind-body system through prana, and again, the senses. So, when we look at fire, when we smell incense, these sort of healing sensory experiences, walking actually on the earth in nature, looking at nature, listening to sounds of nature, and then, of course, self-inquiry, reflection, reading spiritual literature. All of those things are tools for awakening. And I feel like the more tools we use, the better off we are. The more we can deal with these challenging, emotions and help move through them. So we do want to engage all of the different aspects. And again, this is one way of categorizing the tools. We talk about koshas or sheaths in Ayurveda of how does this mind-body system, get created? You saw that map of creation. And again, we do have a physical body. On the left there, you'll see there are the different layers in different descriptions of, again, yoga and even in Vedic philosophy and these descriptions of the layers of life. And this is sort of how we talk about it at the center. So I always put that there. Because it's a little bit of an extension, a few more layers in there than the traditional 5. But the Annamaya Kosha is our layer made of food, essentially, the physical body, matter, so that we do have this experience of a physical body. And the most direct influence on that is the food that we eat. And again, when we keep all of these layers cleansed and open, not stuck and stagnant, then we can start to go within and experience our divine nature. So again, that's why in Ayurveda, a lot of the tools do have to do with food and, the physical body. And then there's pranamaya kosha. So then, and again, the kind of visual we use at the center, environment, I like it because it gives us, you can see personal body, we call it, that's the annamaya kosha. But even beyond that, beyond our physical body, we have this, teaching that the extended body is also our body, and that again speaks to the fact that we're all part of a bigger system. And actually in the toxicity world, we do recognize anything that's out there is in us as well. We are that. And so, that also gives us some sense of social responsibility, social awareness, that we do want to keep the planet healthy because that is our body. So then, of course, we have our personal body, and then the vital force, or pranamaya kosha, is this energy field, that really prana moves through these energy fields. And again, they sort of run into each other. So then we go into the mind, right? So then prana, that divine intelligence, is carried through every cell in the body and awakens that divine intelligence. And, again, this is the mind where we have experiences, we have our emotions, our thoughts, we have the intellect, which is, the manomaya kosha is the mind, meaning what are the thoughts, what's coming in through the senses, that's part of the mind. And then the vijnanamaya kosha, which is the intellect, our processing of all of the things that are coming in through the senses and the thoughts that we do have. So we create beliefs, discriminations, judgments, and stuff through eventually ego. So then we start to define ourselves by, our mind, our thoughts, how we process them, and then we create an ego identity. And again, it's not that it's bad, but you'll see it is the most constricted part of who we are. So as long as we're not identifying with ego, and we, again, open up that narrow sort of definition of who we are, now we're going into the Anandamaya kosha, which is the layer of bliss, the layer of Ananda, the soul layer, spirit, consciousness. And again, we sort of divide these up at the center into like personal soul, which would be considered Atman, or Jiva, which contains the seeds of our memory and desire, our conditioned soul, And then we start to move into the collective soul, which is, again, our archetypes and these psychic energies that exist, that we all have access to. And then ultimately, Brahman, universal consciousness. And so again, we work with all these layers, at the center. Like sometimes we are working with the Annamaya kosha, the food, sometimes, Pranamaya kosha, sometimes we're, going right into meditation and experiencing the universal self. Because again, there's so many tools out there, and I feel like the more we use, the more we can move through. And again, when we're dealing with emotions, we're really trying to detach our definitions of ourselves with that ego mind. So again, this is just a different way of classifying that puts into some perspective why the tools, again, like you hear about yoga and breathing and all these different tools, it's because each of those tools is working on a different layer to cleanse, to connect those layers to, again, the flow of consciousness through all of these layers of who we are, and then we become enlightened beings. Okay, next slide. So again, this is just, again, like I said, I like charts and organization, and so these are the sheets that I was talking about, the koshas, and these are, again, the tools, many of which I'm going to talk about. So with the physical sheet, with yoga, we can, it does address this physical body because we're moving the body in different ways, and it does create flexibility in our body and our joints, and of course then flexibility in the mind. So yoga actually could also carry over into the pranamaya kosha, especially with pranayam, which is breathing, the whole branch of yoga that has to do with breathing. But again, in Ayurveda, lifestyle, like what we're eating, when we're sleeping, are we aligning ourselves with nature cycles? That's all in that Annamaya kosha, and detox, cleansing. So we do programs at the center for cleansing. Because again, sometimes when we're clogged up in the physical body, it's hard to move through emotions, and it's hard to get into our spiritual practices. We're having pain, we're having digestive issues. So, we definitely use that as a tool for awakening the whole mind-body system. And then, of course, breathing, and how we use that prana in our body. Are we giving it up, away with activity of different sorts, too much activity? And then, of course, the chakra system, as I mentioned, is, those are the channels, the nadis that prana flows through. And, of course, what's coming in through the senses I've talked about. Mantra is, of course, you can silently repeat, or you can, chant out loud or just listen. And that's one way of what, you're bringing this sort of the vibrations of consciousness into your mind and your body. And mindfulness, like, again, being mindful, which basically means witnessing, being the witness to your thoughts, being the witness to things that happen in your life. So that's working with the mind layer. And then, of course, wisdom, jnana, self-inquiry, svadhyaya, your spiritual practice, you're reading spiritual books and contemplating, who am I? Many masters have reached enlightenment just by self-inquiry. And then our practices, yamas, niyamas, these are all branches of yoga, and meditation, of course. And then meditation also then blends down into the direct experience of consciousness, which is Anandamaya Kosha. And then this is where, some of the other branches or paths, karma yogis, bhakti yogis, when we're doing this from a place that's completely detached from ego, then we're directly experiencing consciousness as well. So that's the key, is to serve, and again, that can be just in day-to-day life, when you serve your family, or you see someone and you smile at them, and that could be, again, considered, when you're looking at somebody as I am you and you are me, that's a way of being a karma yogi too. Okay. So briefly, I just wanted to, again, because in this diagram of koshas, the physical body, it is important. And why it's important for emotions, again, we know that it affects the microbiome, and we can get very scientific. There are neurotransmitters, et cetera, when we eat food, it kind of affects the brain. But also from a spiritual context, we want to eat sattvic food. So we talked about sattva, like how do we create more purity and clarity of the mind? You have to ingest food that's sattvic. So that's pure, organic, freshly prepared foods as much as possible. And again, we sometimes prescribe based on doshas, what's right for that particular person. But this is why food is important, this Annamaya Kosha. Again, moving your body, so it could be doing some yoga, asanas, Surya Namaskar, could be cleansing, which is Ayurvedic massages, oils, herbs. And then that clock down there is really to address this idea of aligning ourselves with our natural cycles. When we align ourselves, do the right thing at the right time of day, and if you've learned about Ayurveda, you eat, biggest meal should be at lunch, go to sleep by 10, wake up before 6, there's some very kind of strict guidelines of what you do at different times of the day. And interestingly, we're learning in biology and circadian rhythms are very important. And our genes turn on and off in a circadian rhythm. So there are certain things we're best suited to do at different times of day. And it correlates amazingly accurately with what Ayurveda says. And when we're aligned with nature, when we're aligned with natural cycles, then consciousness starts to flow through us much better. And again, it's awakening the mind as well as making the body healthier. And as I mentioned, each of these practices could be a whole lecture in and of itself, but I just want to give you that perspective of, when you do eat healthy food that's full of prana and it's sattvic food, that's good for your mind as well when you're doing your yoga. And especially, again, pranayama. As I mentioned, prana carries divine intelligence. So when we want to start to look at our life experience as through the eyes of consciousness, pranayama is necessary to circulate that to every cell in the body. And in Ayurveda, the root of the mind is in the heart. So when we say listen to your heart, that's actually in Ayurveda that would be listening to your mind, not your brain and your thoughts, but what's spiritually in your heart. And then it circulates to every cell in the body through prana. The other thing, and we had some conversation again at the break, is that this is moving energy, keeping it flowing through the energy body where we hold emotions and we store emotions. So a lot of traumas, a lot of emotional stories, memories are stored in the physical body, especially childhood memories, some karma, so karmic memories, because, especially as children when we have traumas or we don't learn what to do with our emotions, we don't have the tools always as children, and so that gets stored in the body. So it shows up as adults. So a lot of times people, are surprised at how much of their behaviors are rooted in these emotions from childhood. So again, we teach a lot of pranayama. You don't have to sit like that to do pranayama, so don't worry. We teach people to sit in a chair, be comfortable. Certainly advanced yogis can do that, and you can get quite complicated with your pranayama. We teach very simple breathing, and that again helps to circulate divine intelligence and move emotional energy. And the reason that's important when you're working with the body, with yoga and pranayama, and I do pranayama every day, and again, what you start to feel is that experiences can happen and you don't get that same trigger, that same impulse of an urge to react to things. Not that I still don't have buttons, but I definitely notice that it's less and less over time as if you can think of these as channels of, water, and there are these plugs. right? The more you can sort of move that and clear the channels, things don't get stuck in places. That's what you're feeling with emotion. So, and again, there's many different descriptions of pranayama in the yogic literature that are, that all have very specific, effects. And so, I'm gonna talk to you about just some simple breathing that you could start, today, as we move along. But pranayama is very important. Next slide, especially for emotions. So again, we teach yoga and pranayama for even the doshas. So if you already know you're a vata, pitta, or kapha, vatas are more light, airy, like to move, can't sit still, even in their mind, a lot of thoughts. The air and space types. Pittas are more direct and focused and intense a little bit. And then kaphas are more kind of the laid back, content, kapha types, earth and water. So again, sometimes to stay in balance, there are different types of breathing, but anytime you can just move the breath, again, we teach different types of movement, because sometimes if people are moving way too much and then they're doing a yoga style that's a lot of movement, or they're doing something really energizing with their breathing, it can sometimes, create more imbalance. But outside of that, again, we'll talk about some just very simple breathing techniques that anybody can do to start. Next slide. So again, with the Pranamaya Kosha, there's a lot of really fascinating research on the mind, and again, this concept of the mind being in the heart. And there's an organization called HeartMath that I really love. I love looking at their research. They've been researching breathing for decades. And they have a lot of really good research about the electromagnetic field around the heart. And that's where I said in Ayurveda, the heart is in the mind. So when we have, what we would consider sattvic states of being, compassion, love, gratitude, it shifts the electromagnetic energy of the heart. And we know in medicine the heart is an electric organ. That's why we can do EKGs. And now with technology, there's even technologies where you can hold it a little bit away from the chest, and the technology is getting better, so you can even detect it 3 feet outside of you, and it picks up the electricity of the heart. And anytime there's electricity, there's an electromagnetic field. And so HeartMath has studied this for some time. Our thoughts and emotions affect our magnetic field around us. And that's why, when somebody is enlightened, you feel that energy, because we interact with each other. At least if people are within 5 or 8 feet of you, you're all interacting with each other's fields. So that is a good thing, because all of you are enlightened beings being here. But you know what it feels like when you go into a room and there's people that are really stressed, like a job situation, you walk in and you're like, ugh. You feel that stress, you're feeling people's electromagnetic field. And so again, there's really a lot of validation to this idea of the relational mind, that our mind, my mind is your mind is my mind, this is all the cosmic mind. And the more constrictions they are, the less all of us can feel connected, right? And so there are these concepts of social coherence. When we are in coherence with the natural vibration of our heart, then that will affect the person next to you. And so relationships start to shift at work and at home. And then when home and communities start to shift, then we get global synchronization and global harmony. So again, in times when there's a lot of global strife, political, geopolitical, this gives us permission to work on our spiritual practices, because if we can shift ourselves, then we start to shift the cosmic mind too as well, the collective mind, I should say. Okay, next slide. So these are, again, just the slides I use because I like slides and graphs and ups and downs and arrows. But this is the heart, this is the concept of the heart-brain system. The heart will influence the brain more than the brain influences the heart. Like the brain influences the heart in the sense of how fast to beat, and things like that. But the state of mind of the heart, the emotional state, actually sends signals back to the brain to tell the rest of the body what to do. So that's why when you're in a expanded spiritual state of being, sattvic feeling, sattvic thoughts, you're sending signals back to the brain to tell the rest of the body to synchronize to that more blissful state. And again, this is all from HeartMath. So if you look at the top, there's something called heart rate variability that's checking the stress. That's why I brought up all those slides on stress and relaxation response in the body when we're in restful awareness. And there's a balance. So you can kind of just grossly tell. The top is when someone's frustrated. So there's like kind of a lot more irregularity there. As soon as, and on the left there too, that's just, you know, and relaxation actually, not thinking much of anything. And the line in the middle, and this bottom graph here, is all you have to do is tell people to focus on their heart and breathe slowly. So you need to slow the breath. This is what yogis always said, right? We have a certain number of breaths in our lives, so don't use them all up. And when we're stressed, we breathe faster. So we do want to slow down the breath. And when you focus on your heart and you just think appreciation, gratitude, love, it could be anything, compassion, these sattvic states of being, your nervous system changes and it becomes what we call coherent. So physicists and people in the certain areas of science know when things are in coherence, everything's working better together. So we want coherent systems. And again, the rest of the body, that's what this big spike is. This is just relaxation. Nothing wrong with relaxation, but it's not the most optimal state. When we're in relaxation and we're bringing in gratitude, appreciation, the whole body starts to sync together. So that's basically what those graphs are showing, that everything starts to work better. And there's an incredible flow of energy that happens here. So the numbers, it's hard to see, but things are working exponentially better than when they're not in coherence. And again, in physics and in engineering, they understand in coherent systems, energy moves much faster. And so what I observe is when you're in this state of coherence, I feel like that's consciousness, that you're channeling the energy of consciousness, and you can move much more quickly through really everything around you.